So, if I may ask everybody to sit down, I hope we have enough chairs. Also, thank you. The short delay may have given some of us time to watch the first minutes of the game Spain against Morocco. That's going on, and I hope we will. That's bitter for some of us. And I hope we will find out the result after this event tonight. I want to welcome everybody joining us here in Vienna as well as online for tonight's outreach event, LGBTIQ rights under threat. Tonight we're going to discuss with an interesting panel and great speakers the current state of LGBTIQ rights in Europe and our perspective for a more equal and just society in Europe. Some organizational details in the beginning. There is a translation possible as well online as for those of us here. For all who got a headset or still getting it at the moment, the German translation is available under 1, the English one under 2, and the Spanish one under 3. As many of you have seen, we have also the possibility to continue tonight's discussion after this event for those of us here in Vienna with some drinks and food and a good party with music afterwards. I want to welcome all of you. I want to thank the group of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, especially, of course, one of our 5 great MEPs from Austria, Andreas Schieder, and his team for organizing this event, for hosting it together. And for organizing it together with SOHO, the Social Democratic LGBTIQ organization in Austria, with the Socialist Youth, the young generation within the Social Democratic Party of Austria, and of course together with Rainbow Rose. Since we are here in this great location in Vienna, and because I have seen that she is here as well, I want to thank the Social Democratic Women's Organization of Austria and Vienna with her president Eva Maria Holzleitner for hosting us tonight. And now we will get started. LGBTIQ rights under threat is a topic that's probably more important now than ever. We're not just talking about LGBTIQ rights, we're talking about a broader backlash against equality and against the rule of law in Europe and also in many other parts of the world. So I'm looking forward to a great discussion with you. There will also be the possibility to participate for the audience later on. But now, to get us started, I want to welcome the president of the S&D Group, Irache Garcia Perez, to the stage.
Compañeras, es todo un
Es ist wirklich ein großer Stolz, teilnehmen.
That for a number of reasons. First of all, because I'm surrounded by comrades, brothers and sisters with whom we've always fought for LGBTIQ rights in Europe. This is our fight. This is the future of the rights in Europe and in the world. We also want to remark that the Socialist and Democrats group has been the group which has been in the vanguard of these last decades, defending LGBTIQ rights in civil society. In civil society, well, on its own would not have been enough. All of the progress which has been made in establishing these rights in our countries, in our parties, has all been stamped by our political family. That's why, as a political family, we are proud, and rightly so, of what we have achieved. Today, there are political movements to our left and to our right that have claimed that they are in the vanguard. Well, it's great that there are other parties that also defend these rights, but we've also got to draw a focus upon the work that we've done. We've been the first political group in the European Parliament who actually developed LGBTIQ strategy back already in 2006. And our commitment is strong in our national parties, but also in the Rainbow Rose and socialist parties. So I can say on behalf of our entire group that we have Mark Angel as a vice president of the LGBTIQ intergroup. And Mark Angel, well, we know that we're in good hands when we have placed this responsibility in your hands. It's great to have comrades from the LGBTIQ in our group as members of parliament, but also as parts of our staff of assistants. Our actions in the public sphere and in the private sphere are also part of politics and have an impact. I'm very happy to be here in Austria to congratulate our MEP, Theresa Moitz, for her upcoming marriage, and then also for the head of Rainbow Rose and for her union just a few months back. So these are examples of everything that we have achieved, everything that we are doing to turn the rights and dreams into a reality, the dreams of so many. So much of a willing, of an aspiration to achieve our dreams. Now, when we're asked in politics, are we proud? Are we satisfied? Or do we get satisfaction from our work? Well, sometimes it's tough to see how our work plays out in actual people's lives. But one time that is very clear. One area where there's great satisfaction is when we see that we have tried to do something, when we've tried to make people's lives just a bit happier. And that's very much the case of our efforts in this area. We're achieving things, I'm convinced, but there's still lots that needs to be done. In our political movement, the LGBTIQ rights are human rights. They're protected in the Charter and in the treaties, the Charter of Fundamental Rights. But given the fact that decisions are taken often by unanimous decision, well, things are difficult at the European level. Sometimes we find ourselves blocked. Now, in our political group, we're doing our utmost to change the treaties so that we can overcome vetoes and we can achieve European anti-discrimination legislation at the local, regional, state, and European levels. We should guarantee that being a citizen who is LGBT enjoys the same rights that any other citizen, the same level of protection that any other citizen, man or woman, would enjoy in Europe. From the big cities to the smallest towns. We've got to make sure that European citizenship is something, and that everyone understands that there are no areas where you can discriminate. That everyone knows that the socialists and Democrats are on your side, fighting against LGBT phobia and discrimination, as we did when we declared that the European Union is an area of freedom for LGBT people. This is the message that we put to those governments who are complicit in messages of discrimination and hate, that we see that there's a wave of backwardness that is trying to undermine the rights of LGBTIQ. We see it's being impacted by other countries. We could mention what's happening, for example, with Russian propaganda. We see this happening in other parts of the world, for example, the United States. We see, therefore, that these debates and these resolutions that come out of the European Parliament, such as that on the arco-iris families, or the situation of rainbow families, or the situation that we find ourselves in the Qatar World Cup here in November, or the resolution and debate that we had on the hate crimes which affect LGBTIQ people in Europe, and the recent homophobic murder in Hungary. Now, or in Czech Republic. There will be very soon, after December's plenary, as a follow-up of what happened there, and the resolution which was taken in our plenary. Well, this mission will be led by Joanna Seva. So here we have this need to ensure that the rule of law is obeyed through everywhere in the European Union, thanks to the conditionality rules. And we've seen that member states can see that their resources will be blocked if they are not respecting the values of the European Union. The European Union cannot be seen as something that you can take or leave as you please. No, it is something that is based upon a space of values. And people have to understand that there is a need to move forward and respect the rule of law and make progress. Now, in our upcoming report on the state of law of the Union, we will call upon the European Commission to include fundamental rights in this report so that we do cover the situation of LGBTIQ people everywhere in Europe. Now, let me conclude by saying we will continue to defend the list of hate crimes. We have seen what's happened in Hungary and Poland, and when it comes to not respecting anti-discrimination attempts, and we see things blocked in council at this stage. Now, brothers and sisters, socialists and Democrats, we need to continue to work. We need to continue to build a Europe which is safe and free. In times of war, we've got to continue to defend our democratic model based on freedom and equality. I'm convinced that we can build upon what we have done. We can continue to work for a free society, an equal society, a proud society, one where each and every person can love who they deem that they love. Thank you very much.
The applause speaks for itself. Thank you. Thank you for also pointing out how much we still have to do to reach full equality in Europe. And I think I speak for the community in Austria, but also in many other countries. We know that we have an ally and a friend with the S&D group, and that is good to know, especially in times like these. You pointed out how important also the work of the LGBTIQ intergroup in the European Parliament is, and we're happy to hear from Mark later. One of the things we are especially proud of in Austria at the moment is that thanks to a socialist initiative, we since a few months have our own LGBTI intergroup on the national level in the national parliament. And that's why I'm happy to welcome one of the co-presidents and the president of Soho Austria to the stage, Mario Lindner.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Genossinnen, liebe Genossen, es ist ja, LGBTIQ-Thema hat immer was mit Vielfalt zu tun, darum rede ich heute auf Deutsch.
There's a lot to be said, and I'd prefer if you'd allow for me to speak in German because my English isn't sufficient. I've always been asked in Austria, when we come to the LGBTIQ issue, what is it? What is it? What is it that really burns you? What is the issue? What are the problems? Because we can adopt children, we can marry. Individuals can also donate blood as well. So there is everything possible. Is there anything that hasn't been dealt with in Austria? That's the question. Now, when we speak about discrimination in the private sphere, then there are still issues, of course, that we have to deal with. For example, children enter to sex change operations for children. That is not possible right now. And that's why it's very important for you to be here. It's very important for us that you are here as well, to be able to go into the various issues, even the issues that still haven't been dealt with in Austria. Now, our social democrats are on the right side, I feel, be it LGBTIQ rights, be it women's rights, be it sexual rights overall. So when we look at the situation, I think indeed we can say that indeed we know what we want, and we must be very loud, we must be very vociferous. And when we speak about women's rights, gender rights, rights for LGBTIQ, we have to raise our voices loud. They have to be heard in Europe and throughout the world as well. So I'm particularly glad that you're here with us today, and I'm looking forward to a very exciting discussion. Andy, thank you for making this possible. Evelyn, thank you for being here. And I'd like to say that Evelyn and I have published a book together. It's called Radical Solidarity. And there are numerous social issues and questions that are raised in this particular publication. When we speak about LGBTIQ rights, human rights, women's rights, it always boils down to social policy, pension policy, labor policy, and as social democrats, we have to really not play one issue against the other. We have to understand that all are interlinked. We have to also not play human beings against each other. That is the meaning, basically, of international solidarity, to work together.
Thank you. After these two motivating introductions, we come to the main topic of tonight. LGBTIQ rights under threat, the theme of tonight, as I said, does not only mean a backlash against LGBTIQ rights, but also a backlash against the rule of law or against women's rights. That's why I'm very happy to introduce for a keynote Robert Bidron, that I get it right, I practiced it 10 times today, the president of the Committee for Women's Rights and Gender Equality in the European Parliament, as well as one of the most outspoken LGBTIQ advocates all over Europe. The stage is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It looks like I'm not the only gay in the village tonight. Am I right? Yes, after these motivation speeches, the line is really high for me, but I try to handle. And yeah, indeed, I have a feeling that we are to discuss tonight not only that winter is coming concerning the weather, but also concerning the LGBTIQ rights and the fundamental rights all around Europe and all around the world. And I have a feeling that, of course, we might be happy that and discuss if the glass is full, half empty or full empty, but the issue is there and we feel it. And when we look at the crises, the COVID-19 crisis, the economical crisis, the war crisis, we see that there are always scapegoats of this crisis. There are always somewhere the people to blame for the crisis. There are always victims of this crisis. And we in our committee and my colleagues can say it clearly, that we see it very clearly that girls, women, minorities, are the easiest scapegoats to blame of everything. And I'm starting this not to scare you, but to tell you that this situation has its real victims. That when you use the hateful rhetorics, when you use the hateful speech, then there are real victims. From hate speech to hate crimes is a very short way. And we should learn from that. You know, I come from Poland, and you probably see Poland as a very conservative country. But I come also from the country which has its history. The history of my country is not only sweet, but it's also bitter. It's a history of a country where we had our past, which was terrible. And I thought it will never happen again. That the freedom zones, the zones free of something, are only in the textbooks. And this is not the case. I thought I only will learn from that from the history books, and it's not the case. 30% of the Polish territory is LGBTI free zones. 30% of the country, which already had free zones, Jew-free zones, where Jews could not enter the tramways, they could not enter the schools, they had to sit separate in the public places because someone somewhere decided that they're not equal to other human beings. And here we are, 2022, in the middle of Europe, in the heart of European Union, 30% of Polish territory is LGBT-free zone. And I say from hate speech to hate crimes is a short way, and it brings victims. There are people who are paying the highest price. You see Dominic from Bieżun. Dominic was 14 years old. I say he was because he hung himself on his own shoelaces. He hung himself because for many months at school he was bullied for being regarded as queer, as faggot, as gay, as they called him. We never know, and we'll never find out whether he was queer, faggot, or gay, because he committed recently suicide. But he left his farewell letter. In this letter, he described his dreams of living free, of loving who he wants to love, of describing his enemies, but also people he loved. Dominic is not the only victim of the state-organized witch hunt we face in Poland, Hungary, and more countries, not only in European Union, but all around the world. I brought this map tonight of ILGA Europe, showing where we are. This is today's Europe, a Europe of inequalities. This is a continent which we regard as the safest continents in the world, where our own citizens still don't have equal rights, where the citizens are being divided for better category and worse category, where they have more rights and less rights. Should it be the case in 2022? We as social democrats, we as progressive, we have this special duty not to tolerate this kind of situation. We have a moral obligation to globalize. We might say we are against globalization, I would agree. But there is one thing I would agree in globalization. We need to globalize human rights. This is our duty. Because when we are not defending our values, when we are not standing on our positions, that this well-funded, well-organized, well-politically supported anti-gender, anti-LGBTI movements, they come and they play their role, and they become more and more stronger. We see it in many countries all around the world and in Europe. We see how they are also hijacking the values which are fundamental, like family values, like children's rights, and they use them for the wrong purpose. And who, if not us, should be the reference point for all those people, not only LGBTI, but women, minorities, ethnic minorities, all the people who feel excluded, marginalized, discriminated, who, if not us progressives, we should defend their rights. We should stay on our positions. It's our duty and it's our obligation. So I find it very important that we will have a courage as progressive and social democrats to defend these rights, that we will be not trying to behave tricky ways, that, well, it's another crisis, let's put women's rights, LGBTI rights, all these issues on the side because there are more important issues. like in my committee, which I have honored to chair, the FAM committee, where I see it clearly how these issues are being treated. The importance of this committee, the position of this committee is not equal to the other committees. Why? Because it's a political decision. Because this is showing where the power is. So where the power and where the money are, there are usually men. The men who are holding this power and this money. Where there is no power and money, there are usually women, minorities dealing with that. And who, if not us, is to change it and fight for this change? It's Social Democrats and progressives. So Ursula von der Leyen, and I'm glad Irache has mentioned that we need to create European Union as freedom zone for everyone. We should ask Ursula von der Leyen what has she done so far to change this situation. Has she ever reacted for the death of Dominic from Bieżun? Have she reacted for LGBTI zones with the strength which is needed? Have she reacted for the changes in the legislation in Hungary, for attempts of changing the legislation in so many EU countries? Very little. So it's our obligation to defend these rights. It's our obligation to have courage and determination to do that. And one of the things we should do is to standardize human rights, is to bring the same standard for everyone. You know, we are very often referring to this wonderful Istanbul Convention, which is devoted for combating violence against women, the Council of Europe Convention. I've been working for 8 years for Council of Europe. They have almost 400 treaties protecting different minorities, protecting in Europe water quality, postal pigeons, even the pets. I love pets, they being protected by Council of Europe. But there is nothing among these 400 treaties devoted specially for LGBTI people. Is it a coincidence? No, it's a political decision. And it's up to us as Social Democrats to have courage to bring it on the table and say, yes, it's 2022. And all the people on this continent, they deserve equal rights, wherever it is. So I look forward for this discussion, also for coming from the country of solidarity, of this legendary solidarity movement, which we say have changed the world. And we, as Social Democrats, we know the best that we need to tear down these walls because we are the best in building bridges. So we should bring the bridges wherever it is, in this solidarity with other minority groups, with other people all around Europe. We are the best in building bridges. Let's leave to the right wing building the walls which we will tear down. And So what we need now is this solidarity, but also courage to change the situation. There is still 70 countries around the world where you cannot do coming out because you will be criminalized. There are 11 countries where for the same-sex relation, there is death penalty. This is our moral obligation. Also to remember that there is world outside our bubble, that there are people dying for being whom they are. And who, if not us, as Social Democrats, is to change it. So, coming to the end, I have this feeling that this is our time, that this courage, this strength, this ambition to have dreams, it's our challenge we are facing in these difficult times. But people are counting on us. People are really counting that we will have this courage to put these things on the table, that we will be protecting people, that we will be fighting for their rights. Because who if not us? And being in Berlin, being in Austria, I must to finish with that. I must to finish with this famous sentence of Conchita Wurst. We are queer, we are here, get used to it because we are unstoppable. Remember that.
Quoting Conchita is, of course, always a good idea in this city. Thank you, Robert, for this great keynote and also for showing not just the problems but the possibilities we have in the fights ahead. We now move on to our main panel discussion. Sitting down, that's nice. And I therefore want to welcome to the stage Marc Angel, the co-chair of the LGBTI intergroup. Where do you want?
Next to you.
We are going to be the queer corner here. Next, Evelyn Regner, our Vice President of the European Parliament. Of course, for us as Soho, that's really important, and we are very happy to have Camilla Gafiers here, our President of Rainbow Rose. And last but not least, Anna Pirchkalava from the Young European Socialists. We would have had slightly a gender gap here. But Marc, even though you ran away, let me start with you. I want to pick up with something Robert just said. We have to globalize the fight for human rights. I think many of us, looking at the media, looking at our own experiences, see a backlash that we are facing. Even though we made incredible progress over the last decades for LGBTIQ rights, while we are meeting here under the topic LGBTIQ rights under threat, not long from now, the right wings in the European Parliament are going to meet under the motto, under the shadow of the rainbow. So from you, also as co-chair of the intergroup, how do we globalize that fight? What's the perspective we have on the European and the international level to globalize and organize for equality?
Well, it's very important to have many allies, and I'm so happy that so many allies are here in the room, and also in the European Parliament, because the LGBTI intergroup in the Parliament is the biggest intergroup. We have 157 members from 5 political parties, so it's a cross-party movement. And of course, these members are not all LGBTI persons, but they are allies, and that's so important, this allyship. We need civil society as allies, but also we need allies in politics, and I think this is very important. And I'll give you another example. When we had this resolution declaring the European Union an LGBTI freedom zone, just to counteract what happened in Poland, we had 498 votes in favor of that resolution out of 705 MEPs. And I think that was a day where I was very proud. I said, I'm not alone, and this is important. And this is, I think, also why I'm a social democrat, because I knew I was never alone. I studied here in Vienna in the 80s, and I was every evening in the Rosa Lila Villa, which was the city of Vienna, the Red Vienna, who gave that
Yes.
together with civil society. And then I knew already, wow, social democrats, they are fighting for minorities, and this made me also become a social democrat and an activist. So. But to globalize, first we have to Europeanize, and we have to defend the rights that we have, and we have to convince others to go the same way. And you know, fighting for LGBTI rights, it's no extra rights. There's no extra rights. It's the same women rights. Women don't want extra rights. They just want equality, the same rights. And this is the message we have to give. And there is this anti-gender movement, which is horrible. They call me an ideology. I mean, being an LGBTI person is an identity. It's not an ideology. And these people, they are the ideologists. And why? Because they are ultra-religious. They want to defend patriarchy. They don't want changes in society. They don't want equality. They are afraid of equality. And therefore, I think we have to really work together. And I think also women's rights, children's rights, and LGBTI rights are under threat. You know, and we see patterns in Poland. It started with the LGBTI, and then the women's rights were under threat. Children's rights are under threat. They want to ban sexual and relationship education in school, which is terrible, because this is important that children have good sexual and relationship education, age-adapted and comprehensive, because it makes them stronger, it makes them resilient against abuse later on, and it makes them, some people do not, it prevents suicide, etc. So these rights, we have to defend them, and we do it in the European Parliament. We also, you know, there's the LGBTI strategy, which also has an external dimension. We are doing it in our dialogue with our neighborhood, in the framework of the neighborhood policy, with the candidate countries, and I think we have already achieved some progress there too, and that's how we will do it. And I think we must pay very much attention that the Russian anti-LGBTI dialogue is already picked up by the Hungarian government, by some other far-right policies. They just copy that same language Russia uses, and we cannot tolerate that. Also, in the time of the war, we have to be very careful.
Thank you very much. I think you already slid past some topics we're going to discuss later on as well. Thanks for not answering them yet. But since
I didn't get the question, so sorry.
But since you stressed the importance of allies, I want to move on to you, Evelyn. Just to mention it, before you were thankfully agreed to be here today instead of Theresa Moig, who fell sick and who, because she's not only the youngest, but also a great member of parliament from Austria as well. We wish all the best from here. She's for sure watching online. But stressing the importance of allies. We, as Soho Austria especially, know that you have been a lifelong ally of our community, but what you stress, especially in recent times, is the importance of an interconnection, not only between the LGBTIQ movement and women's movements, feminist movements, but also going into workers' rights, unions' rights. For that, the question, what can we learn from each other? What can bring us together in different movements? And also, how do we build a working global or European project for equality on all levels? Easy question, 3 sentences.
Nevertheless, I would like to say all the best to Theresa. We're so happy, we're so proud that she's in European Parliament, and I really wish all the best also, because it's not a secret, for the preparations to her wedding. So happy that we're looking to this great event as well. So here are the best wishes from the podium. I mean, of course, we are not all queer, but of course, so many of us are here, and together, if you put together feminists, LGBTIQ intergroup people, and all those being engaged, and really thinking about social democracy, I mean, we are unstoppable, because this is logically to be brought together. Mario was mentioning radical solidarity, and that's it, what social democracy is about. Workers' movement, we are used to work closely together in order to improve the situation at the workplace. And I just can tell you, to give you one example on all those things we're trying to do at concerning labor law and labor rights. When there started, after Me Too, a podcast, I'm just mentioning because AK Niederösterreich was very close here in the building, a podcast on bullying at the workplace, on somehow what happens with Me Too. Then it came just out that there are so many of all these bullying and harassment issues deal with LGBTIQ rights not being respected. When women tell their stories of sexually being harassed. So somehow we just see, I mean, sometimes and very often there is the same pattern, and therefore we are not stoppable, and therefore there is nothing that can divide the feminist movement, the LGBTIQ movement, because it's so logic that we are radically working together. And this in the trade union movement, and this everywhere. And the trade union movement, of course, in this regard, has to play a prominent role, a very important role, because we are talking about rights that have to be respected.
Thank you, Evelyn. Moving on to Camilla. As president of Rainbow Rose, you speak for the socialist and progressive LGBTIQ movements all over Europe. That means countries where we have at least gotten formal equality in many parts, and big groups who are supported by their parties, to small groups of activists in hostile countries and hostile regions. What's your experience of the situation at the moment? And I think also to give an output, what can we do, what can each of us do to support a movement that's active all over Europe and not just where it's easy?
Thank you very much for the question. I'd like to add on what Robert said in his keynote. We have a very diverse situation all over Europe. So we do have countries, as you said, that has a very good legislative situation where the social acceptance is very high. We do still have issues in those countries too, especially for the most vulnerable of our community, which is the trans community. But we do have countries in Europe where the situation is really, really hostile, where the situation is really bad. And listening to all of you, I was thinking, what brings us together? What is the one thing that is different from us than the rest? And then I thought of Belgrade, of Europride in Belgrade this September. And what moves people is emotion, it's feelings. And when we walked in Belgrade to get to the Europride, the one emotion I personally felt, and the one that many of the LGBTQ people felt that were there, was fear. Because walking through the streets of Belgrade on this special day was hostile, was fearful. And that is what the right-wingers, the conservatives, bring up. It is fear. They make politics with fear. And they use it in every aspect. Women's rights, refugees, LGBTQ people. The war now as one of a very prominent zone. And what emotion is the socialist and social democratic emotion? The only hope, the only feeling that is stronger than fear is hope. And we are hope. Our politics are hope. We give hope to the kids that are not sure whether they can come to become an adult that lives and loves who he wants to live or she wants to live, or be who she or he wants to be with the body he or she wants to have. And that is what unites us. That is what unites the activists in hostile countries, but what unites us in a country like Vienna, in a country like Austria, in a city like Vienna, where we have a very good situation. It is a feeling of hope for a better life, not just for me, not just for you, but for all of us and for each and every person in our societies.
That could already have been the closing statement. But we have still a discussion to go.
It can only get worse than now.
Just for the one speaking after you. Anna, you know, I'm thinking about something also Robert said. You are quoted very often tonight. It was a really good keynote. From hate speech to hate crime, it's a short way. As working with socialist youth organizations all over Europe, I think especially the young generation sees a new wave of hate. In many different countries, we see it online, We saw it in the US a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, we saw it also in Europe, in Oslo, in Bratislava. Working with young people and taking up the topic Camilla just raised about hope. What hope can we not just set into the next generation, but how can we work with them and organize the energy that is there to create a more equal and safe and just Europe?
Thanks a lot for the question, and I also want to repeat what has been said by Robert and by speakers in this room, that unfortunately every word we are saying, every negative comment online, in real life, every hate speech has an effect on people, and especially on young people, because we all know that young people are most affected when it comes to crises. We are the ones struggling the most with mental health. And if you add to all the economic turmoils we are right now, again, the bullying and the hate speech everywhere, then it really drives young people to a limit. And we have seen unfortunate examples to that. You mentioned Bratislava, and Mark very rightly mentioned about right-wing populists calling LGBTIQ issues ideology. But we must really think that this is not an ideology. This is a person's lives. This is ruined families. This is ruined friendships. This is ruined lives. I submitted the picture I wanted to show that 2 young people recently have been shot in Bratislava by a person. And Matus and Jure, and they are real people. And they are the ones who, and their families, who really felt these consequences. And when we are, the young right-wing populists say that this is an ideology, we really need to press that this is individual ruined lives that we should mention and care about. But of course, I want to continue what Camilla said about the hope. I think that we as a social democrats, our strength as a political family is that we are good allies with each other. I felt like I'm representing young people, young European socialists, and I feel a lot of support from SD, from PS, for our sister and partner organizations, that whenever there is an issue that hurts us, we are always supporting each other, we are standing together, and that's why our struggle is so strong. And it was rightly mentioned that we are not the party or organization only with a single issue struggles. We are intersectional and we are also international, and I think we always need to remember that till all over the globe we achieve what we want, we are not really finished with our struggles and fights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we come to a round with the audience, so everyone who has statements or short questions prepared can get ready now. One quick question to each of you, and I want to start again with Mark, if that's okay. You, as well as Evelyn, are in the highest democratically elected body of Europe, the European Parliament. There were a lot of steps already mentioned tonight that the Parliament took to support LGBTIQ equality. What's to come? What are the next steps, the next projects the Parliament is going to work on, especially if we go into the 2024 election?
Well, I have good news. In 2 days, Helena Dalli, our Socialist Commissioner for Equality, will present the equality package, which will be one directive to strengthen the equality bodies, which are important, and there will be a regulation on parenthood, to recognize parent. When you're a parent in one country, you have to be a parent in all the countries. And recently, I had an oral question in the Parliament on the baby Sarah case, where we have decisions from the European Court of Justice, but member states, in this case Bulgaria, they are not reacting. And I think it's important that we get now legislation to also recognize rainbow families. Unfortunately, it's just vertical only parents, it's not the recognition of couples, but we're continuing to work on that. Maybe we put amendments. I'm sure there will be amendments to make that regulation even better. And this is what we're going to work on, and I'm very confident that we will finish this very quickly, because I know that in our party, in my colleagues in Libe committee, the main committee where this will be treated, are very eager, and I can count on them. So there is legislation on the way. There is also legislation which was already before. There is the Council recommendation on hate speech and hate crime, also when it's targeted against LGBTI people. This is very important, and there was big support in the Parliament for that. So the Parliament is not the problem, it's the Council sometimes, which is the problem, which is blocking it. And I just wanted to say one remark, I forgot to say that before. You showed us this map with the countries, and Irache quite rightly said, if you look at that map where it's positive, it was social democrat leaders who had the courage to change things. In Spain, it was the Social Democrats. In many countries, in all these countries, in Malta, it was Helena Dalli and her government. In many of these countries, it's only because of Social Democrats who were progressive and who were not afraid, and they knew that society has evolved, and they were not afraid of religion, of church, etc. And I think this is also something we have to celebrate tonight when we later party together.
Someone is already looking forward. Before we come to the informal part, grabbing on to something you just said, and for Camilla, just make it short to keep us active up here. You mentioned the
challenging us.
We could also switch to some other language or something.
Ningún problema.
Yeah, no, don't do that. You mentioned the importance of the countries in the council, especially blocking legislation. Now we have the situation in Austria, and you are from Austria, where we just celebrated 1,000 days of the conservative and green government, and what was the best of both worlds turned out to be the worst of both worlds. We have seen no progress when it comes to women's rights, to equality, especially not for the LGBTIQ community. And seeing that governments like the Austrian government block legislation and progress on the European level, what can we do and bring to a European perspective?
Oof, that's a good question. Tough one. Truth is, I think that being very loud and outspoken and having an active opposition, as the ones that we have at all the levels, is only one side of the card. So to point out what the government is failing to do, or is telling us they're working on but never delivering it, because that's basically what they are doing in Austria. Is like they're talking a lot about work they're doing, but they never deliver any results. So the one thing is to point out and to call out the ineffectiveness or the inaction of people. But the other thing is, in my opinion, is to give them the radical contrast. Wherever we are in charge and in government, as Irache said, and as Mark Angel also pointed out one again, we have to deliver. Because if we don't deliver, we are failing the people that are ruling for us. We're failing the people that are putting their hope in us. And we also have to hold those of our party family accountable that are failing to do so. And truth be spoken, there are countries, there are cities, and there are regions where our own party members and our own party families are failing to deliver. So I always believe there's two sides of the things. When we're in charge, we do have to do it. We do have to do it effectively, we do have to do it fast, and we have to do it in collaboration with the NGOs, always. And if we're not in charge, point it out, shout out what they're not doing, but also always deliver what we would be doing in their case. We have to have a plan, and we have to present it, and we have to deliver it.
Thank you, Cami. Going back to the normal order, but also kind of picking that up, we spoke about the national level, the regional level now. Europe isn't just an important force for Europe itself, for the European Union itself, but also internationally. And I think if the disaster that is the World Cup at the moment showed us anything, it's the importance of standing up for human rights all over the world, especially in this case also for workers' rights, also for women's rights, for the whole intersectionality of rights that we represent. What role must Europe play, and what do we have to do even better worldwide to be a worldwide advocate for human rights?
Everywhere, everywhere. Where I'm coming. I mean, when you go to Latin America, when you go to Africa, when you go wherever you're going outside the European Union, there are so many looking at us and saying the European Union stands for values. The European Union stands for something really people dreaming everywhere and are happy and proud to develop further when we're talking about things like social insurance. I've just come to that. So somehow though we are debating, okay, there is a decreasing here and there, that there are good developments. And when you talk about women's rights, when you talk about LGBTIQ rights, of course they are looking at the European Union, what is happening at our level. I mean, of course, also there are other places, people are very much aware of these terrible developments that are taking place in a couple of our countries, but all in all, we are standing for something. And in this regard, foreign politics, I mean, in this regard, whatever is happening elsewhere, LGBTIQ rights are a pillar. So if somebody wants to negotiate for what reason ever is going on, somehow LGBTIQ rights have to be part of it. And of course, women's rights have to be part of that. And that's what we are living. And I really would like to say also this sentence, I'm sometimes really fed up with these, no, it's always, little support is always better than no support, with these blah, blah support. So somehow there are so many, they're just taking symbols for a little moment and then they're just putting it away. So somehow, of course, we need all sort of support and be it that little. But what I expect is also in our, from European governments, that they're really doing something more than just saying, okay, I take a little symbol of the rainbow and I take a little, say a little bit here and a little bit there. What we need is really active legal measures. And this has to be done at the UN level, this has to be done at peace negotiations, and this has to be done absolutely everywhere.
Thank you, Evelyn. Anna, continuing with you, and pre-warning, there is the possibility for questions after this answer. Everyone needs to get ready. You spoke before about the cooperations, especially YES has with PES, with the S&D group, with PES Women, with Rainbow Rose. But I think one of the coming from a youth organization myself, one of the best features of youth organizations, especially socialist ones, is that they work together with NGOs, with the civil society on common causes. From an organizational perspective, also for a right for equality, for human rights, for LGBTIQ rights, what can we learn, what can we do, how to even better work together with civil society in our common causes?
Yes, it's true. And especially in the youth organizations, we know that it's easier to work with NGOs, with civil society. And when we are organizing our activities, our events all over Europe, we are always trying to have civil society and their opinion, because it's critical opinion, most of the cases. And when you are coming from the political parties, it's also important that you listen criticism and you take it into account, you take it in your organization, in your party, and you try to learn from it. But of course, the criticism needs to be constructive and aimed on concrete cases. That's what we are expecting from them as well. But I have learned a lot that we need these self-reflection processes in our organizations. We have to tackle what we are doing, what we can do better. And that's the thing I think that we all can learn, especially when it comes to use the socialist issues. And we also have, I must mention, when you asked the question about like how we can tackle it around the world, we have a lot of bilateral cooperations in the youth as well. There are a lot of cooperations, exchanges. Young people are meeting each other, networking each other, and we are learning a lot as well from each other's experiences. So it's very, very useful processes.
Thank you. And since we have a few members also of the Austrian civil society here, I want to really underline that point. I think also for us as organizations and persons that are politically active, one of the moments that made me most mad and now make me most happy is when you get an email or a call of someone asking you, why didn't you do better? And why didn't you tackle this topic? And why did you just go that far? Taking that also as constructive criticism is a really important thing, I guess, for all of us. Now there is the possibility, if there are short statements or questions from the audience, and there are microphones behind the two cameras. If there are any. Yeah. They are good equipped here.
Just no questions at the moment.
I think you answered all the questions already, or everyone is looking, not the party, but the discussion on the personal level, the networking part of the event. If that's not the case, I think we are going to bring the discussions over to the informal part. A last question for you, since I didn't know till now, but I expect that S&D is coming back to Vienna 5 years from now, and we are going to host an even bigger event together. 5 years from now, what single cause that's most important for you have we achieved in Europe? Easy question. 5 years from now, in 2027.
Okay, then I really would like to start and say that we finally get the horizontal directive, so no more discrimination.
You started so fast. I was just thinking, how do you say it in English? Because it is an English word, but in Austria we always say leveling up, which seems to be the European word horizontal.
Directive.
What was it? Directive. Sorry. So yes, because the discrimination on the workplace, discrimination when getting a cab or when being at a restaurant, that's still so significant for the everyday life of people. And if that would change, that would mean so much, because then we would finally have a tool to at least act against those acts of discrimination. So yeah, what you said.
As a representative of young people, I must voice the biggest concern I think everyone knows that young people have today. It's to live in a more sustainable planet, Europe and the world, of course. Yeah.
Maybe my dream would be that in 5 years, no queer young European has to come out and say, I'm queer, that he or she or they can just live the life they are and don't have to identify as something, just be, because do you know any heterosexual 16-year-old girl or boy who goes to his parents and says, listen, mommy, I have to tell you something, I'm heterosexual, So I think we should just have a world where all the young people just can be who they are, love who they are, and then just have a society which sticks together and have more social democrat governments, so that this map will change, the map we saw before, because it's only us who change it.
But also parents
Voilà.
could stop asking and
Yes.
could just say, who's your partner without a sex?
Maybe
gender?
I also brought a picture and I forgot to put it up. Maybe you can put that picture up. It was in front of the European Parliament, a very colorful.
It was up.
Oh, it was there.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay. Yeah. I saw you beautiful people out there. So.
There it is again.
Yeah. Sorry, I was in green. Red makes me too masculine, so.
Thank you very much. I think this discussion not only saw the different perspectives we have, but the common cause and the common goals that we will check till 2027, hopefully when we come back together in Vienna. Before I ask for the closing statement, just an organizational point of view. After this, there will be the chance to discuss on a bilateral or a multilateral level over drinks and food. And in about 20 minutes, they're in Austria very well known, especially in the Austrian MEP group, DJ Bad T and Tatjana are going to play. So a good party is ahead of us. And now I would ask us down from the stage and Andreas up for his closing statements.
Anyway, I think closing statement should not be too long. It's the first lesson to learn. But it was called S&D outreach event. So I wanted to underline, as we have the meeting of the S&D group here in Vienna for the next days, the idea of us, all of us, was also to reach out with some topics. And the second point is, whenever we discuss about LGBTIQ rights, when you put something on the internet, on your social media, people are writing, don't you have any other problems? And my answer always is, yes, we have. We have a lot of other problems as well. High prices, energy, war. But we should not forget all these problems are interlinked. And at the end of the day, as was also said on the stage in the speeches, behind discrimination is also one single individual person which cannot live its life like he, she, or they want. And at the end, social democratic movement is simple, is a quite simple answer. It is having a good life for everybody, irrespective which sexual orientation, which class belonging, who your parents are, whatever you are, simply to organize a good life for everybody, and also at the beginning of your life until the end of your life. It's also important, nobody has time to wait until somewhere, so we don't have time to wait for the next 5 years like Sebastian was asking us. We have to start now. Thank you for this inspiring evening, and thanks those who have been watching, and now we will have also time to party. Good evening.